Good morning and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and our toll-free number, 800-951-0592, the website at allamericangold.com, and, of course, Wealth Insurance. That's what we do, the physical delivery of gold and silver, something that we know. Listen, when it gets bad, that's when you really are going to be happy that you have your gold and silver put away. Jason, this division in this country really getting worse seemingly by the day. I thought an absolute, the Ukrainian-Russian war, idiotic. Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan, idiotic. Now the raid on Mar-a-Lago, Jason, I just don't get what's happening.
Yeah, well, there's there's a lot of stories going around. You got to see what's happening.
I don't understand. And again, this is part of the reason why, Jason, I would say it all the time. Democrat, Republican, right? They're one and the same. This is absolutely ridiculous. I think they're so scared of Trump running again. They're trying to. This is what I think. They're just trying to find something so he's not allowed to run in 2024. And let's face it. Let's be honest. They've got the left has no good candidates. The right, we don't have any good candidates. I mean, what are they going to do? Run Biden again? Run Hillary? Right? I mean, Kamala Harris is a joke. And again. They just are dividing this nation. It's incredible. It really is. I think this is just an example of them trying to hang on to power, and this is how they're doing it.
That's right, Joe. This is, we can't tell if this is politics as usual because Trump is such an unusual character, but it sure seems like a lot of politics as usual, Democrats versus Republicans. I guess we'll find out further down the line.
And where are they? I mean, DeSantis said something, but I mean, let's face it. I've never seen all these elected politicians, from Hillary's emails, Hunter Biden, right? We can go through this. We haven't seen this, and now this is a former president that we're talking about. And again, over what? I don't know what. He took some papers home. I mean,
well, it was. Secure papers. It was not for no one's eyes only.
He took the nuclear launch codes home. Is that what they're saying? Give me a break.
Well, the point being is when it comes to the type of data that it's off. This is secret. This is government secrets, and you can't this can't be out there. Well, of course, Hillary Clinton and many other people have. And you have their computers, the data and all that's out there. Why didn't they prosecute and go after Hillary? You got that angle to the whole thing. It's just Washington. It's so slimy, Joe. It's so hard to. It's so hard to.
And again, this just is another, I think, example of how they've loaded the inner workings of the government. With the leftists, the FBI now really, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing more than another arm of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I can agree with that for sure. There's the Democrat Party is much worse than the Republican Party. I just wish the Republican Party was actually trying to fix what's going on.
Right, we don't actually have the party that we need to have, but so very interesting developments. We've got gold higher again this morning. Wall Street down, not a lot, but down a little bit as we watch all of these different things play out, and of course, from Alex Jones to Donald Trump to the upcoming elections in November, what looked like was going to be a massive wave of Republicans. We'll have to wait and see, but it doesn't look like it's going to be the huge wave that I think a lot of people were thinking just a few months ago, but we'll have to see.
That's right, Joe. We'll have to see what happens. You know, it's the October market collapse and sort of the geopolitical stuff that we've been talking about. You know, that's when the waters are calm around Taiwan. That would be the time for China to do whatever they're going to do about Taiwan. It's also right before the midterm elections, but there's all kinds of finger pointing you can do as a central banker when things go bad.
Yep, and again, the legislation that passed the Senate yesterday, just nothing more. The Inflation Reduction Act, nothing really more. Let's call it what it is. Hey, we're going to give out handouts to the quote unquote green energy that we already know is not sufficient. And then on top of that, we're going to blow up the size of the IRS. That's really what it was about. And this is what happens around these times. Up, it's election. Hey, real quick, let's get these things slammed in there and call it what it really is. And we're going to call it the inflation bill when really it's once again the government spending taxpayer money on things that don't work. Oh, and by the way, we're going to blow up the size of the IRS. But don't worry. It's not for you poor people. So for anybody that doesn't have anybody, you don't have to worry about getting audited by the IRS. It's just those guys. Hey, if you're making over $400,000 between, I'll say this is my personal. Anyone making between $400,000 and $1 million, you better be worried about your wealth. That's all I'm saying. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Not a lot of economic data out. We had some housing data out. I don't need to bore you with the details. It wasn't good. Inventories way up. What they call stale listings. Stale listings are listings that have been on the market for 30 days. 60% of the house is considered stale. Not a great sign, right? Inventories continuing to rise. So far, there's been some price reductions, but not nearly enough, so we'll have to wait and see. Rice futures skyrocketing on a bad harvest in India. By the way, India, 40% of the world's rice is from India. About 22 metric tons. They're saying that India may be slapping on export restrictions. They're saying that Bloomberg is saying that prices could reach $400 a ton by next month. That's about double what it used to be. Do about 3 metric tons of rice. Steak Shack, is it Steak Shack? Is that who it is? The burger chain. They came out and said, oh, by the way, Shake Shack. They got to raise prices again. It's the second time this year. And I think, Jason, this just goes to that underlying inflation that we're going to be seeing on with the Fed. More rate hikes, more than I thought. Are going to be happening September. I'm still at another 3 quarters in September, but now I think they're probably going to raise rates, like you said, Jason. You've been saying this all along. You think they're going to raise rates in October and December?
I think it depends on these next 2 CPI numbers. If they stay at 9.1 or go higher, which I think is very possible, Joe. They'll raise rates into next year. I don't see how they can stop it. I think what they're trying to do, Joe, is just to get the thing to slow down and balance off. I don't think they have an interest in completely smashing and crashing the markets and everything if they don't have to. But I think they're okay with high inflation as long as they can tell people, look, it's coming down or it's balancing off. Then they'll be okay. I mean, I think the numbers because these are that CPI number is year over year, so it doesn't really paint the whole picture. These numbers you have to know what the numbers are, and if you look at the 2021 numbers in May, June, July, August, September, they were in the 5s and mid 5s. Starting in October, it got to the 6s, and in November it got close to 7, and December was 7. So those numbers could, when we get to October, November, December, drop a little bit, but I mean, it's still really, really bad. So we'll see what the numbers are, Joe. And I think interest rate hikes into next year is very possible, but it all depends on the the fake or real data that they use. And I think the CPI number, that's going to be big, Joe. I mean, that's 9.1 is a nightmare for them. And so what happens?
Have to see.
Yeah.
9.5.
What if it's 9.5? 9.5 is just a disaster for them.
I'm really worried about the even bigger fake number, that core CPI, which they say that they care about.
Well, yeah,
that number.
Yep.
That number's been just got, I think, to 6. I think that number is the number that's going to stay hot, and we're going to see a lot more rate hikes because of it. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is, and again, anything can change here, but I think we've seen the low in oil prices. I actually think oil prices, I think we're going to get another big increase in oil prices here heading into the winter months because the supply-demand fundamentals have not changed. And like I said, we've been fortunate that we haven't had a lot more. And that's just not going to last. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, Joe, they're causing a situation for oil prices to go up. You know, we live in America, so for us to think about not driving somewhere is unthinkable. But in other countries like China, they don't really need to drive to work in a lot of places. They're in these huge cities where if they have to, they could take a taxi or a bus or walk or a bike. So I think the amount of people not using gasoline because it's just not a part of their budget is creating a lot of people not buying oil. I think demand for oil is going way down, but what are they doing worldwide? They're lessening the ways we can get energy. I still think Germany getting rid of all of that nuclear energy that's the stupidest thing ever, and it's going to cause the oil prices to at least stabilize where it's at, and looks like it'll go up dramatically, Joe. I mean, it should go up dramatically here. If they would simply create more energy, those oil prices would drop huge because I don't think people can afford this inflation, Joe. The prices should be way down.
It's going to be really, really interesting, and one of the things that we've been worrying about with the slowdown, because we knew with what happened the last time how vulnerable Wall Street and the banks are. The fact that rates now are going to go higher than people. Kind of interesting what gold's doing right now. Because remember why gold was falling. The dollar had this big rally because the Fed was in rate hiking mode. But everybody, including myself, was saying, hey, listen, this probably won't last that long. Probably won't last that long. Well, now everybody's changing their tune and saying, man, this is going to last even longer. So a lot of people would logically assume, well, that means gold should keep going down, and it's doing the exact opposite. Gold continues to rise. Matter of fact, gold's bumping up on 1,800. The December contract, which is the one that everybody's talking about, it's been as high as 1817 this morning. And one of the reasons why is something that the Federal Reserve has done that a lot of people don't know about. Wall Street on Parade, the Martins exposing something that the Federal Reserve has been bailing out these banks and really Wall Street trading houses, and most people aren't even aware. Lesson in history. When we created the Federal Reserve Act going back to 1913, it allowed the Federal Reserve to create what they called the discount window, making loans to Fed member banks, which are engaged in making loans for agriculture, industrial, and commercial purposes. Okay, that makes sense, right? Everybody could understand that. The Federal Reserve Act, however, strictly prohibited the Fed from making loans for the purpose of carrying or trading in stocks, bonds, or other investment securities. Of course, look at their balance sheet, right? We already know, okay, that's gone out the window. After 1929, And Jason, I know we've talked about this. Congress created the Glass-Steagall Act of 1933. That was very much the Dodd-Frank Act of the Great Depression. The difference was the Glass-Steagall Act actually prevented almost all of the malfeasance that was happening within the banking industry. Of course, Dodd-Frank did none of that. Dodd-Frank, they sold us a bill of goods, right? Jason, they told us this was going to solve the problem, and what we ended up finding out is Dodd-Frank simply eliminated thousands of banks and made these big banks even bigger.
It fixed their problem.
That's a great, you know what? That's a great point. That's exactly what it did. Hey,
Yep.
It fixed the central bank problem. One of the laws in Glass-Steagall, first, it established the FDIC, right? You know, that $250,000 were all guaranteed. Yeah, if you believe that, then you're dumber than I thought.
Back in those days, it was okay, I guess. It was more healthy back then.
Remember, back in 1933, you know what it started at? $1,000.
Oh, it was lower back then. Okay, so it's always
only $1,000. Matter of fact, at the most people forget it was only $100,000 before the financial crisis. It was kind of neat, isn't it? Hey, let's make it $250,000. Well, gosh, you would think then when the FDIC's got to have a ton of cash. I mean, really, wouldn't the rule be, okay, well, then a bank can't have more deposits. Any one bank shouldn't have more deposits than what the FDIC has in money to pay out, right? That would make sense. Because if you're going to say $250,000 is guaranteed, and J.P. Morgan has $3 trillion in deposits, well, the FDIC better have $3 trillion then. It doesn't. Matter of fact, I think it's about $130 billion. Let me tell you right now, that probably isn't enough money to bail out Johnson Bank. $130 billion. I mean, right now, any bank that doesn't have $130 billion in assets is either getting ready to go out of business or it's getting ready to be bought out by another bank. But neither here nor there. It created the FDIC. It also did something very, very smart. It said it outlawed the merger of any federally insured bank with Wall Street investment banks. Made it illegal. Because investment banks, Jason, are inherently risky. Of course, what happened? Well, the banks didn't like that. So they got Congress in 1999 to repeal that law. And that's how we've gotten the mega banks of today. Do you know, since that law has been changed, that from 1999 to today, that we've lost over 2/3 of all of our banks, Jason?
Yeah. I've listened to you before I came on the air talk about every year the less and less amount of banks out there, and it continues to shrink down to nothing. And it is quite the reflection of every other industry out there shrinking the amount of choices you have, Joe. So it's getting quite scary that that's kind of how a socialist society is. You have no choice. There's the state-run corporation or just the government-run whatever it is, and that's your only choice. And we're heading for that, Joe. You could say with the digital currency, you could be right. We could be down to like 5 banks. That's not a good way to handle your own finances. And well, there won't be a choice because it'll be digital.
On July 28th of last year, and I did not see this, the Federal Reserve announced it was creating a $500 billion permanent bailout facility for quote-unquote primary dealers. Primary dealers, that's your Wall Street trading houses. to support what they said smooth market functioning. And again, this is because there's problems in the bond market, right? Lack of liquidity is a big issue. The Fed gave the facility the bland-sounding name of Standing Repo Facility, which is probably why nobody paid attention to it. Because I just felt, the repo facility. Yeah, I know, they've been running that. And basically what the Fed has done is now allowed for a discount window, not only for banks, but for Wall Street trading firms as well, which actually doesn't even have this power, Jason. This shouldn't even be allowed, and yet nobody from Congress has said a word about it.
Right, Joe. Well, because we're in a situation, we have and we'll hit this on the other side of the break, but we have a fractional reserve lending with the banks. They need deposits to lend out money, but who's gonna take out a loan with the rates going up, Joe? They're the fundamental problem, and I think that's why the reverse repo market having $2 trillion there. I think that's their stopgap to push this as far down the road as they can.
800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Gold's up 5 here, 17.95. Silver's actually down a little bit. Silver right on the precipice here of another breakout, another technical level, which would then set up $22 silver. Right now, silver about $20.50. In light of what happened at Mar-a-Lago last night, I just got an email because I reached out to one of our suppliers. We were selling, remember the Trump round, Jason?
Yes.
We sold those last week. They still have some. And there's a lot of different Trump rounds out. I'm telling you, these are the best ones I've seen. It's kind of hinting at Donald Trump running again in 2024 and becoming the 47th president. If you want some of these Trump rounds, they're $620 for a roll of 20, which with silver up even higher than last time. It's an even better deal today. So we got those Trump rounds, $620 at 800-951-0592. Now, I know we're getting a little technical here, okay, but I'm getting to a point. So the Federal Reserve, under Dodd-Frank, for them to do an emergency operation, they have to get permission from the Treasury. Right? So that way we should know. Like I said, why didn't I know it last July about this repo facility? Because that's really the Fed is saying, by creating it, what the Fed is saying is, hey, this debt market isn't working right. And what they mean by not working right, what does that mean, not working right? Well, it just simply means, well, they call it a liquidity problem. Let me tell you what it really is. There's not enough people willing to buy the debt for what they want to sell it for at that moment in time, period. At that moment in time, I'm not willing to pay that. Well, obviously, that would mean what? Well, how about a lower price? You know, that's what price discovery is. Well, what are you willing to pay at this time? So what the Fed has been doing has been loaning this money to these Wall Street banks to pretend like this debt is worth that. But here's what's really interesting. And by the way, if you want to look this up yourself, under the Federal Reserve, Section 13, Part 3, that they must receive prior approval from the Secretary of the Treasury before they launch these emergency operations. So what did the Fed do? Well, we're just not going to call it an emergency. No, we're just going to call it an open market operation. No emergency here. But if there is no emergency, why do you need the operation? Because you didn't need it before. Matter of fact, the only time you've ever done one of these operations was back there in the financial crisis. So it kind of sounds like it is, right, Jason?
That's right. That's what it sounds like.
Now, one of the other things it's not allowed to do, and this is after Dodd-Frank, okay? It was part of the law that the Fed could not make loans to insolvent institutions or help institutions avoid a bankruptcy filing, and the names of the borrowers and the amounts borrowed had to be given to the Senate Banking and House Financial Service Committee in 7 days. Well, they've been doing this for over a year now. Under the new standing repo facility, the Fed has essentially taken Congress out of the loop because they just said, well, no, it's not an emergency. Oh, it's not one of those. No. This is just a standard thing. And oh, by the way, you don't need to know about it. Well, our friends the Martins at Wall Street on Parade, well, they did a little FOIA request. And not only, by the way, the New York Federal Reserve, which is where this is all taking place, is owned by J.P. Morgan and Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs, right? This is kind of how that works, right? As of last Friday morning, here's where it gets interesting. The Federal Reserve added Morgan Stanley, and then Morgan Stanley's got like 3 or 4 different names. They're all in here, but it's Morgan Stanley to the list of the counterparties at its, quote, standing repo facility. Of course, the trading unit of the mega bank is already a counterparty to 2 other Fed facilities. Essentially, Jason, the Fed now has allowed Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, B of A, all of these mega banks now to borrow money from 3 different Fed operations without having to declare an emergency, without having to say that these institutions may be on the verge of bankruptcy, and most importantly, without having to notify the public.
Right, Joe. It's interesting because they've been raising the rates this year, and they've got it up there a little bit now. But people were getting even loans in the high 2s, the low 3s. But I know a friend of my wife. She's been quoted a possible 4.1%. Well, that doesn't match how much they've been raising the rates, Joe. So I think they're trying to figure out how to sugarcoat what's going on and give people low rates to keep the borrowing out there. Because who can borrow at the rates where they're going, right, Joe? So they need more money. They need something. They need something finagled to make things work, don't they?
Yeah. Well, listen to this. So under this rule 13-3, if you go back from 1932 to 1936, so the Great Depression, only 123 loans were made in this act. Guess what the total was? This is hilarious.
It's probably huge.
No, it was the 30s. The loans totaled $1.5 million.
Oh, well. Doesn't
right
seem
now,
like much.
You got to remember, there's no mega banks, right? We didn't have all these, banks were small banks.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Go fast forward to the last time, December 07 through 2010. They did it to the tune of $29 trillion. And now the Federal Reserve is saying, well, you know what, we've got all these windows open all the time now. How bad is it? How dangerous is this house of cards? Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. And again, this is what happens when you let the wolf guard the hen house. This is what happens. The male feces, all of this stuff, we don't have true price discovery. It's something that I've been railing against really since the financial crisis, right? They're trying to prevent price discovery. They used it with quantitative easing. The Fed's now using it again illegally illegally. Oh, well, we're just not going to call it an emergency. Well, then what is it? If it's not an emergency, why are you loaning money to Wall Street mega institute? Because clearly you're not allowed to. Right? You're only supposed to do it for what? Commercial loans, right? Business loans, right? You're not supposed to be doing it for stock trading and other market type things, Jason. But again, this is why people are going to be so caught off guard. This is how they wipe them out. How do these bubbles get created? This is how.
Everything the Fed does and everything that they are is illegal. They were created illegally, Joe. So anytime the Fed does something illegal, it doesn't shock me ever. Everything that it's a corrupt corporate structure that's to enrich the people that own it, and to it's at the cost of the average taxpayer. I mean, we didn't have federal income tax, but in 1913 they created the federal income tax because they needed the person that the agency, the IRS, which has 87,000 more agents now, more than doubled it, to collect for them. Yeah, we did have federal income tax. Andrew Jackson paid off the entire national debt after getting rid of his central bank, the second bank of the United States, and paid off the national debt. The only president to do it, and he did it by getting rid of a central bank. And then he had surpluses, which then he paid back to the states because it was all about tariffs, overseas tariffs, and westward land movement. You don't even need federal income tax, Joe. Don't need it.
Just think about that. Could you imagine states could get money from the government because we ran surpluses?
Yep.
Right? And instead of now, what are they? Oh, we're going to give you money. We don't have any money to give you. We're going to go into even more debt. And it's just, and again, look at the last piece of legislation, their inflation legislation. What did they do? They essentially made, outside of the U.S. military and maybe the Postal Service, all of a sudden the IRS is going to have more employees than the rest of the federal government.
Yep, you just need more guys to squeeze that lemon a little tighter, Joe. Get every drop out. That's what that is. Squeeze every drop. That's all the IRS does. You know, and
I'm wondering what people are thinking. What do you think they're really going to do with all these IRS agents? Honestly, do you really think 87,000 of them that they're out there going after the tax cheats? I mean, literally, that's what they're saying. Oh, you know what? We're all just a bunch of cheaters. Listen, they're going to take our wealth, pure and simple. Why? Because we have these debts that have to be paid. Period. By the way, these rate hikes, just think about every point of rate hikes. Do you know how much more expensive it becomes to fund the federal government?
A lot.
Do you know how much? We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars per point. And now we're saying, hey, we're going to zero. I think 4% is probably too low. Could we see, as Jason said, the New York Fed has a scenario where, hey, it may be 6 or 7%. I mean, we're talking about, by the time we're done here, we could add an extra $1 trillion a year just to try to support the weight of all this debt, Jason.
That's correct, Joe. They got to get the inflation under control, and we don't know what's going on. You know, the stuff that went on with Trump today the timing is suspicious. You know, what's actually going on? Why is there 87,000 more IRS agents? Especially if your plan is to go to a digital currency, doesn't that kind of cut the usefulness of the IRS? You don't need as many. Right?
Do you? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I think they go hand in hand. They're going to determine how much digital currency you get. I mean, I think that's exactly what this is about. Because, listen, someone's got to pay. There are no more bank bailouts. They made that perfectly clear. Right? Instead, they're bank bail-ins. Well, what does a bail-in mean? That means the unsecured creditors an unsecured creditor. Anybody that loans the bank money. Well, who loans the bank money? Well, when you deposit money into your bank, that's what you're doing. Now, they don't say it like that, but that's what you're doing. As the law goes, when you put your money into that bank, the bank owns the money. Period. You, me, everybody else is an unsecured creditor. Now, unsecured creditor, what does that mean? Well, simply means whatever assets are left of the failed institution get sold off. And then they get paid out to the people that lent the money to the bank. There's an order, right? Who gets paid first and who gets paid last? Well, guess who gets paid last? You guessed it. The unsecured creditors. Period. By the way, the FDIC's got about $130 billion. How much do you think you're really going to get? Patriot Radio News Hour, final segment coming up. 800-951-0592. We got the Donald Trump silver rounds. They're awesome, spectacular. $620 on the Trump rounds. On the gold side, I got U.S. $5 Liberties. You're going to save a little money here at $600 on a $5 gold piece at 800-951-0592. Gold's up $17.97. Silver's down about 10 cents here, $20.50. Wall Street's down, but not a ton. By the way, Ford just announced, listen to this, Jason, 15% increase on the Ford F-150 electric truck. You will not be able to buy one for less than $50,000 starting with the year 2023, which probably comes out, in a few months.
Yeah.
So was $40,000 now going to be $47,000 plus tax plus delivery. So let's call it what it is, $50,000. And that's for the no frills one. You want the nice one, $100,000.
I don't know. What will it be when America has to make all the chips that go in there instead of Taiwan?
Yeah, and listen,
is coming.
They just flat out said the cost of everything significantly more expensive. This inflation, it's not stopping. This is what I tried to tell you last week. Get your assets protected. Get your money into gold, or call my son Joey. Listen, he was on last week talking about a minimum $25,000. You can get into an annuity that's not tied to Wall Street, gives you a 5+% return. Plus, because they're such a great company at Northwestern Mutual, they pay you a dividend of over 5%. 602-909-9048.
There's a lot of things that you need to consider with what's getting ready to happen, and nobody has the actual blueprint of what's going to happen, Joe. But just keep listening, and we'll be able to at least stay at least a step ahead of it, because it's not like these guys don't telegraph what they're doing. It's just that the timing of it. It's just hard to get the timing down, Joe. If we could figure out when they're going to do things, it would help.
Well, and again, I've been telling everyone October, we'll see. Things are getting weird. Robert Schiller, he's a housing guru. This is a June number, by the way. 824,000 single-family homes are under construction in the month of June. That was more than any time since October of 2006, right? Are we dude, I don't know. Are we headed for another housing crash? That's an astronomical amount of houses, and all the new the new home builders have saying that it's stopped, that they have stopped building. They're saying that the number of homes on market jumped 31% from the same period last year. That is a record high increase in number of homes for sale year over year, according to Bloomberg, Jason. So not great news out of housing today at all.
No, and I'll keep going back to, we don't know for sure what will happen with the pricing on these homes, Joe, but I don't think it'll shrink and crash as much as some of these guys are saying out there. That
hey, still up 17% year over year, right? Still up. So
there's a lot of dollars coming home to roost, Joe. A lot of dollars coming home to roost.